God's three lines of defense. Psalm chapter 94, verse 22. But the Lord is my defense, and my God is the rock of my refuge. This is a presentation for Way of Life Strategic Planning 2023 to 2027. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 13. And all thy children, young and old, shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children. A compendium on city outpost evangelism, which was prepared by Dr. James M. Lee from Loma Linda University in California in 1973 for his thesis on education. This important manuscript has been the basis for Way of Life Association Incorporated and the basis for 144,000 teachers and Generation 144K. God's three lines of defense, as presented by Dr. James Lee in his compendium on city evangelism. The first line of defense is health. By establishing better living centers in the large cities and in the country, where we are able to present the three angels message using the right arm of the message. The second line of defense is education through Generation 144K, and our schools are to be established in the country. The third line of defense is food through agriculture, both established through gardens in the country, and the last step will be from the mountain, where we will get our food from nature. This chart of Way of Life Better Living Centers has been adapted with the written permission of Dr. James M. Lee from Loma Linda, California, and it's taken from his compendium of city and outpost evangelism, which he has prepared for his thesis in 1973. Way of Life Better Living Centers for 2023 to 2027. Goal is to expand throughout the whole world in presenting gospel, medical, missionary evangelism through country living homes and city mission better living training centers. What we do at the country living homes is to offer a workers' homes, guest retreat, develop small industries, and of course doing agriculture. We also do business training for setting up such a program, and also administration, giving out health education and prevention training, medical evangelistic training, and of course to produce food products. This brings together both the workers and the guests from the country living home to the city mission better living training centers. Actually, the city mission are the feeders for the country living homes. At the city mission better living training centers, we offer an open health food stores, vegan cafeterias, clinics. We offer treatment rooms and lecture halls to do 12 steps to health addiction treatment, nutrition classes, health evaluation based on the 8 laws of health, natural remedies, and health lecture. We also do in the cities house-to-house work, prevention and health instruction, home nursing treatments, homeschooling program, and literature evangelism, which leads to evangelistic meeting, Bible studies, baptism, and we believe in doing so that we are ushering in the second coming of our Savior and King of Kings, soon to come. And this is, of course, to the instruction of the three angels' messages. What is the connection between true education, the 7-day Sabbath, Generation 144K, and the health message? The Great Controversy, page 437. The importance of the Sabbath as the memorial of creation is that it keeps ever present the true reason why worship is due to God, because He is the Creator and we are His creatures. The Sabbath, therefore, lies at the very foundation of divine worship, for it teaches this great truth in the most impressive manner, and no other institution does this. The true ground of divine worship, not of that on the seventh day merely, but of all worship, is found in the distinction between the Creator and His creatures. This great fact can never become obsolete and must never be forgotten. It was to keep this truth ever before the minds of men that God instituted the Sabbath in Eden. And so long as the fact that He is our Creator continues to be a reason why we should worship Him, so long the Sabbath will continue as its sign and memorial. Had the Sabbath been universally kept, men's thoughts and affections would have been led to the Creator as the object of reverence and worship, and there would never have been an idolater, an atheist, or an infidel. The keeping of the Sabbath is a sign of loyalty to the true God, Him that made heaven and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters. It follows that the message which commands men to worship God and keep His commandments will especially call upon them to keep the fourth commandment. And of course, that message is found in Revelation chapter 14, the three angels' messages, also found in Revelation chapter 18. The connection between true education, the 7-day Sabbath, Generation 144K based on true education, and the health message. Make sure that everyone gets to know and choose the Creator of the 7-day Sabbath by teaching creation in Genesis chapters 1 and 2, by identifying all the universal laws in Genesis chapter 1, by comparing them to the physical laws of sciences such as astronomy, physics, chemistry, mathematics, and more, by teaching the Hebdomad and the Mazzaroth, by teaching the biblical calendar in Leviticus chapters 23 and 25, the wheel within the wheel as found in decree number 4, by teaching when to observe the 7-day Sabbath and all the feasts of Leviticus chapter 23, by bringing them to obedience to the 8 laws of health in order to prepare the body and the mind to obey the 10 commandments, and more specifically the 4th commandment. Therefore, true education then leads to the observance of the true creation Sabbath and true worship. What is the connection between false education, Sunday observance, and the Global Compact on Education from the Vatican for 2020 to 2030? What are we learning from history? What is the connection between education and Sunday law? Number 1, was education ever to be legislated by federal or world civil and church governments combined? The Book of Education, page 21, answers that question. The system of education instituted at the beginning of the world was to be a model for men throughout all after time. As an illustration of its principles, a model school was established in Eden, the home of our first parents. The Garden of Eden was the schoolroom, nature was the lesson book, the Creator Himself was the instructor, and the parents of the human family were the students. Number 2, who decides what is the curriculum of a global world system of education? Education, page 22. The laws and operations of nature and the great principles of truth that govern the spiritual universe were opened to their minds by the infinite author of all. Number 3, Is it in line with the principles of true education? Education, page 15. To restore in man the image of his Maker, to bring him back to the perfection in which he was created, to promote the development of body, mind, and soul, that the divine purpose in his creation might be realized. This was to be the work of redemption. This is the object of education, the great object of life. Number 4, are education and religion connected? True education leads to the 7-day Sabbath observance. False education leads to Sunday observance. Number 5, will Global Compact on Education be mandatory? As the movement becomes universal, it will be declared mandatory. Read Revelation chapter 13. Number 6, if not followed, will Global Compact on Education involve fines, imprisonment, precedent with homeschoolers, courts of law? Those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. Read the book The Great Controversy. Continuing with the connection between false education, Sunday observance, and the Global Compact on Education from the Vatican for 2020 to 2030. Are we repeating history? More information on the Compact on Education. The Global Compact on Education from the Vatican, Looking Beyond. On Thursday, October 15, 2020, at 2:30 p.m. in Rome, Pope Francis did once again address the theme of education, which is central to his teaching and dialogue with the world. He did do so with a video message, which is both a summary of what was suggested on the theme during his pontificate and a program, because, as Francis has repeatedly said, to educate is an act of hope. At the end of the message, Pope Francis did suggest that all people of goodwill join the Global Compact on Education, a pact to encourage change on a global scale so that education may become a creator of fraternity, peace, and justice, an even more urgent need in this time scarred by the pandemic. And we give you the link here for your perusal. Ye shall know my breach of promise. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Living Fountains or Broken Cisterns, page 215. Never has the world seen such an enduring system as the papacy, or the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, patterned so nearly after the truth of God, and resembling so closely both in church government and educational principles the plan delivered to the chosen nation, that only an expert, guided by the Spirit of truth, could judge between the true and the counterfeit. It had, as had the Jews before then, replaced the life by the mere form. So firmly laid was the foundation and so substantially built were the walls that for centuries it baffled all attempts at overthrow. This structure had as its foundation an educational system. The mortar which held the bricks in the walls was its educational methods, and should the building fall, the foundation itself must be attacked. The only way to overthrow the papacy is to destroy its foundation, its educational system, the mortar which holds the bricks together, its methods. It can only be destroyed by upholding true education. What is the real purpose of the Global Compact on Education from the Vatican for 2020-2030? Pope Francis' purpose of the Global Compact on Education is for all people of goodwill to join the Vatican by making a pact to encourage change on the global scale so that education may become a creator of fraternity, peace, and justice, an act of hope. An even more urgent need in this time scarred by the pandemic, he added. We give you the link for your perusal. The Pope is using COVID-19, a sickness, a pandemic, as a tool for the people to join his global compact on education. He has become an SJW, a social justice warrior, and his target are the sick and those in great needs. And this, according to Revelation 13, is for his own gain, for the gain of the Vatican. God's purpose of true education. Education, page 15. To restore in man the image of his Maker, to bring him back to the perfection in which he was created, to promote the development of body, mind, and soul, that the divine purpose in his creation might be realized. This was to be the work of redemption. This is the object of education, the great object of life. Christ is using true education to perform his wonderful plan of redemption, restoration, recreation of the human race. He has brought us back to give us eternal life. Christian Educator, August 1897. Now, as never before, we need to understand the true science of education. If we fail to understand this, we shall never have a place in the kingdom of God. Education, page 30. In the highest sense, the work of education and the work of redemption are one. For in education, as in redemption, other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 11. And this is indeed the true science of education. We rest our case. What is the connection between true education, the health message, and the Global Compact on Education from the Vatican from 2020 to 2030? Taken from the Pen of Inspiration from Councils on Health, page 506. As religious aggression subverts the liberties of our nation, those who would stand for freedom of conscience will be placed in unfavorable positions. For their own sake, they should, while they have opportunity, become intelligent in regard to disease, its causes, prevention, and cure. And those who do this will find a field of labor anywhere. There will be suffering ones, plenty of them, who will need help, not only among those of our own faith, but largely among those who know not the truth. God's three lines of defense, as presented by Dr. James Lee in his compendium on city evangelism. The first line of defense is health. By establishing better living centers in the large cities and in the country, where we are able to present the three angels message using the right arm of the message. The second line of defense is education through Generation 144K, and our schools are to be established in the country. The third line of defense is food through agriculture, both established through gardens in the country, and the last step will be from the mountain, where we will get our food from nature. As we look at the first day of creation, what we are doing here is applying true education by presenting first the universal laws regarding creation. And in this case, we are studying light. And then we will proceed with the physical laws of applied sciences. As we proceed now, we are starting with the first day of creation, Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. In John chapter 8, verse 12, Christ said, "I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life." 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. So these are the three universal laws that we have chosen. There are many more regarding the light and the wisdom of God and its power. But this is what we would call the spiritual plane, the universal laws. And now, as we pass to the physical plane, the natural laws of applied sciences, we are treating the word light. And when we know about light, we know that white is a total of all colors and black is the absence of them all. So what we are looking at here is actually a physics study of a triangular prism dispersing a beam of white light. This is what we learn in physics. And what we have seen will help in the decree number 8 as we looked at the elements in the periodic table and also having to do with wavelengths and energy. So we see here the longer wavelength, which is the red. So as you check out the red wavelength here, and the shorter wavelength, which is the blue, this is what is separating here because of that triangle prism. This is actually a very simple experiment to run in physics, where you have a white light here, as it says. You have a beam of white light, and as you put a prism, literally a triangle prism in front of it, it will actually separate. And this, to explain it, of course, between the wavelength of the red and of the blue, we need to return to this chart, which we saw in decree number 8, in order to explain the colors that we find in the periodic table. If you remember, we have studied the elements of the periodic table, and now they emit certain colors which we find in the spectrum, and this is called spectroscopy. So here we have the applied sciences. The colors are simply representing the waves here. They're not representing, of course, the sciences, but we wanted to show you the 7 colors of the rainbow, which are shown actually very precisely here. We reproduce them: the red, the orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and mauve, or what we may call fuchsia. So these are represented here. So they're not necessarily to apply to the sciences, but it fitted perfectly with our range here. So here we will be talking astrophysics, physics, spectroscopy, chemistry, and mathematics again, all reunited under the spectrum. And of course, the elements of the periodic table can be applied at the same time. So what it says here simply with that triangle prism dispersing a beam of white light, what is happening in physics in this case, which we are studying the physical natural laws, and we see that the longer wavelength red and the shorter wavelength blue are separated. So let's follow carefully again. As we saw, we know that the longer the wavelength, the shorter the energy or lower the energy. So in the case, for example, of radio, which we would call the radio wavelengths, which are very, very high. It's actually the longest one is right here, the radio wavelength, but its energy is very, very low because it keeps increasing as the wavelength decreases. So, for example, if I go this way, gamma, if we go with the gamma wavelength, you'll see that these wavelengths are very, very low in nanometers, but its energy, which is actually in volt, in electron volts, you can see the energy is really high. It's actually the maximum in gamma. So as we go to the X-ray, again, the wavelengths are increasing slightly, but it's its energy that's very high. In ultraviolet, the wavelengths are increasing, so therefore its energy is lower. Then we come to the visible spectrum of red, yellow, and blue. So these are the primary colors. And this is the dispersion again that is caused. You see the triangle? That is caused by the beam that has come in front of this prism that has come in front of that beam. That's how it's created. And now we have the infrared, again with higher wavelength but lower energy. Microwave, much higher wavelength, lower energy. And finally, radio frequencies, which is very, very high wavelength but very low energy. So therefore, we have again a presentation here of a physical application of the light having to do with spectroscopy, which we studied in the context of chemistry in decree number 8. And now we're studying it in the context of science of astrophysics and physics. And again, it was a representation of the physical natural laws of light to show the wonderful power of light. In this case, being a triangle, which is placed in front of a white light, which emits then the color, the separation of color. And that's absolutely created naturally. And as it says here, the longer wavelengths in the red, this would be the longer, having to go from infrared, for example, to radio wavelength, and the shorter wavelength, which has to do from gamma to ultraviolet, then that's when the separation you can see here that is created, and that's where you have the visible light. This is the magnificent mind of the Creator. This is not any physician or any chemist that could ever have come up with something so magnificent. It's a physical reaction of a prism, a triangle prism that is placed in front of a white light, and it disperses itself. It separates itself in red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and mauve, which are the three primary colors, which are the red, the yellow, and the blue, and of course the other one, the orange and the green, which you have here, and the purples and the mauve. Those are the secondary colors. So the red, the yellow, and the blue are your primary, and the four others are the secondary. And that's what we learned in physics, but it's also in applied science. We can study it in astrophysics, and that's called a spectroscopy, which is the study of the spectrum. And then, of course, very, very applicable in chemistry and the important applied science of mathematics, which we could not do without. So this is where we can now understand the wonderful, wonderful universal laws from the spiritual realm or plane to the physical realm of natural laws of applied sciences in this case. But we can do the same with other application, as mentioned earlier, with the wonderful sanctuary. So remember, white is a total of all colors, and black is the absence of them all. For God who commanded the light to shine out of darkness has shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. 2 Corinthians 4:6-9. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. For God who commanded the light to shine out of darkness, has shined in our hearts, to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. In the face of Jesus Christ.